Welcome to Simply Scottish, a podcast of all things Scottish, with music, features, interviews, and more, on the web at www.simplyscottish.com.
Welcome to Simply Scottish, the 30-minute show of Scottish culture, history and music. I'm your host, Andrew McDermott. Our opening music comes from new Scottish folk ensemble Cherry Grove. You'll hear more from them in a moment. On this episode, an interview with international best-selling writer Diana Gabaldon, author of the popular Outlander novel series. Find an episode guide and music playlists on our website, simplyscottish.com. The show is also available on iTunes and is syndicated 6 days a week on the Celtic Radio Network, available at celticradio.net and on the Live 365 mobile app. I also invite you to like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter, where I post show updates, Scottish news and trivia, and details of our monthly music giveaway. Let's get back to music. Here's more of the song we started out with today. This is Cherry Grove with The Prize, from their debut album, No Time Like Now. In 1988, American author Diana Gabaldon began writing her first novel just to see if she could make the transition from the non-fiction work of her academic years into the realm of fiction. She never planned to share the novel with anyone, which gave her the freedom to write it as she pleased. The result was Outlander, published in 1991, a New York Times bestseller and the first book in the Outlander series, today consisting of 8 major novels as well as spin-off novellas, a graphic novel, and a companion guide. Outlander is more than a book series. It's a publishing phenomenon, with over 20 million books sold and legions of fans across the world. Now, a television series brings to life the first Outlander novel, raising the excitement level for Outlander enthusiasts to fever pitch. I sat down with Diana at the Outlander Fan Retreat in Seattle, organised by publisher Random House. The sold-out event included a keynote address by Diana, book signings, a Scottish country dance performance, an Outlander kitchen feature, and more. Before the celebrations began, I talked with Diana about the inspiration for Outlander, the importance of good research, her favourite place in Scotland, and more. Now, today's Outlander Fan Retreat, it's a celebration of all things Outlander, and in particular, Moby, as you call it, written in my own heart's blood, right. The 8th major novel of the Outlander series.
Yes, that's right.
What are your thoughts as you get ready for today's festivities?
Oh, I think it'll be a lot of fun. We have a huge crowd coming, and they're all wildly enthusiastic. One of the local fan groups has taken over the pizza place just down the road, and they're having 116 people to have pizza after the event today.
Wow.
It's one of the most impressive side effects of these books is the instant sense of community and enthusiasm that springs up amongst the readers.
I bet that's enjoyable for you.
Yeah, no, they get into it big time.
and I'm sure you have fans just across the spectrum, you know. Anybody who loves good literature and good stories. Huh?
Absolutely, yeah.
Wow. Well, I think you'd agree that one should never underestimate the power and appeal of a kilted Scotsman.
Oh, absolutely.
I read somewhere that the inspiration for Outlander came when you saw a man in a kilt on an old Doctor Who episode.
That's right.
So what appealed to you about setting your first novel in Scotland?
I was just looking for a time and place in which to set a historical novel so that I could, I wanted to practice writing a novel. And I wasn't going to show it to anyone, let alone get it published. So it didn't really matter where I set it. I was just looking for some interesting place. Sure. And as I said, I saw this young man in a kilt, and I said, well, that's kind of fetching. And I said, well, start somewhere. Why not Scotland? 18th century, because this character had been picked up in 1745 by Doctor Who. And
and there's the time travel, huh?
Well, no, actually, that had nothing to do with the time travel. It was a straightforward historical novel up till about the 3rd day, because I said, well, of course, I must have a lot of Scotsmen because of the kilt factor, but I think it would be good to have a female to kind of play off these guys, and we'll have sexual tension, that's good. And I said, my 3 days worth of research, I said, well, it looks essentially as though the chief point of conflict in the 18th century in Scotland was the Jacobite Rising, Bonnie Prince Charlie, all that looks like conflict, that's good. And, just from a quick glance, it looked like English versus Scots. Of course, it's more complicated than that, but that's what I had on 3 days worth of research. And I said, so if we make her an English woman, we'll have lots of conflict. And,
there you go.
That's dead right. So I introduced this English woman, no idea who she was, what she was doing there, how she got into the story, but I just loosed her into a cottage full of Scotsmen to see what she'd do.
There's a story right there.
Well, there is, yeah. This is how I work, is by just putting characters in interesting circumstances and see what happens. And she walked in, and a bunch of Scotsmen sitting around the hearth muttering to each other. They all turned around and stared at her, and I was thinking, why? Does she look odd? What's going on? Anyway, one of them drew himself up, and he said, my name's Dougal Mackenzie, and who might you be? And without my stopping to think, I just typed, my name's Claire Elizabeth Beecham, and who the hell are you? I said, well, you don't sound at all like an 18th century person.
Yeah.
And so I kind of fought with her for several pages, trying to beat her into shape and make her talk like an 18th century person. And she just kept making smart-ass modern remarks. She also took over and started telling the story herself, and I said, well, I'm not going to fight with you all the way through this book. I said, no one's ever going to see this. It doesn't matter what I do. Go ahead and be modern. I'll figure out how you got there later. So it's all her fault that there's time travel in these books.
And you couldn't have been more wrong about nobody seeing it, huh?
I know. Well, things happen,
So do you have any personal connections to Scotland, Scottish ancestry?
No, none. Yeah, no.
Wow.
No, my mother's people are mostly from Yorkshire with one German branch, and my dad's people are, originally from Spain, via New Mexico about 500 years ago. So.
Wow. Well, before turning to novels, you wrote non-fiction and honed your research skills early in your career. In the years before almost anything was accessible on the internet, how did you go about researching 18th century Scottish history for your novels?
The old-fashioned way, in a library.
A library? What's that?
Well, I was a university professor, while all of my degrees are in the biological sciences, I did know my way around a library. That's why I decided on historical fiction, because I said it seems easier to look things up than to make them up, and if I turn out to have no imagination, I can steal things from the historical record.
Yeah.
So I said, fine, historical fiction, and things kind of rolled downhill from there.
Things get so easy with the internet nowadays, but you can really tell the depth of research that you engaged in with these novels.
Oh yeah, no, my personal core research collection is about 1,500 books, and I do mean books.
Wow.
But, yeah, the internet is quick and it's fast and it's excellent for small bits of information, but it's good for checking birth dates and small bits of discrete data. If you want something like an overview of the causes of the American Revolution, you should be looking on the internet.
Exactly. So you can get the small things on the internet, but I think you're right. When it comes to real bona fide research, books is still where it's at.
Yeah, for the most part. The other thing is you can get quite a lot of interesting research on the internet because people will, put up personal things which you don't find in the published record.
This is true.
But you have to sort of dig for them, and you don't take those as factual record usually, unless it's a memoir, of course, in which case, unless you would know otherwise. But you need to cross-check things like that, and there's methods for doing this. It's just time-consuming.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't go any farther than Wikipedia.
No, unfortunately. Well, your decision to move Claire and Jamie to America mirrored real Highland history.
Exactly.
In the wake of Culloden and throughout the clearances, thousands of Highland families emigrated to North America and other parts of the world. So was this a natural progression in the story? And was it easier or harder to kind of research things on this end than Scotland?
It wasn't any harder, but it's about the same. Research is just research. It's how much information is available.
Yeah.
And one thing about working in the 18th century is that a great deal of information was available. It was a very literate age.
Yeah.
Printing was very widespread in both the New and the Old World. And there was just quite a lot of information that's still extant. The original sources. You can go to almost any large library and find 18th century books. They were printed in the 18th century. Yeah, I own several of them.
It was a very important century for exploration and documentation of experience and everything. So
geopolitical upheaval, scientific innovation. The second half of the 18th century was just this huge ferment, and so excellent ground for a novelist. There's anything you want was going on then.
Absolutely. Well, in 1999, you released a companion to the Outlander novels, complete with Gaelic pronunciation guide, character family histories, your theory of time travel, and more.
Yeah.
So I know that you're working on a second volume. Is this going to complement your novels even more? And what can readers expect from it?
Well, the sort of the heart of the Outlandish companions are these very long, detailed synopses of the books. You've seen the books. The shortest is Outlander, which runs 305,000 words, which is roughly 3 times the size of your normal novel. The 2 longest both ran 508,000 words, which, as I told my editor at the time, is exactly the same length as Shogun, but it's also about the length of what you can physically bind in covers. So this one is just about 400,000, so this is the 3rd longest.
Wow.
Because the books are so long and complex, and it's quite a long time between books because they're long and complex, people often will go back and reread the whole series when a new one comes out, but not everyone has the time or the inclination to do that. And so for their convenience, we provide these long, very detailed synopses so that, they can read the synopses and kind of catch up with where they are before a new book comes out, or they can go back and, check a plot twist or something like that. So the next book will contain synopses for the second 4 books 5, 6, and 7, from Drums of Autumn up through Moby here.
And I appreciate that you put the Gaelic pronunciation guide in there.
We did our best.
I mean, it just adds to the authenticity, and it's such a strange language when you first come across it. So
well, I've been very fortunate to have, since my 3rd book, to have the volunteer efforts of native Gaelic speakers, which improves the product quite a bit.
Bet.
Prior to that, I was limited to this tiny little Gaelic English dictionary I got from Steinhoff's Foreign Books in Boston. This being before internet, you just couldn't find something like a Gaelic dictionary in Phoenix, Arizona. I mean, Amazon.com didn't exist, and so forth. So this was rather difficult.
Wow.
And then we went to Scotland while I was writing the 2nd book, and I got a much bigger and more sophisticated dictionary, but
There
still,
you go.
I had no grammar, and no sense of idiom.
Yeah.
Naturally. And I got this lovely letter from a Scottish gentleman named Ian McLennan Taylor after the second book, and he said, I've been reading your books; they're wonderful. So nice to see Scottish history, handled so honestly and sensitively, and this is wonderful. He said, there's just this one thing which I hesitate to mention. I think you must be getting your Gaelic from a dictionary. So he said, it isn't that the words per se are wrong, but you're not using them grammatically or idiomatically the way that a native speaker would. Can I offer my services?
Oh, so he's the gentleman that ended up writing the guide?
Yeah, he wrote the pronunciation guide for that. Yeah, now he had some health problems a little later and was not able to help any further there, but I was even more fortunate to get the services of Catherine Ann McPhee, who is a well-known Gaelic TV presenter and singer and so forth, and her friend Kathy McGregor, who is not a native speaker, but very, very fluent.
Absolutely.
And Kathy was a friend of mine to start with, and she said, "Oh, by the way, I had Kathy Ann reading your books.
Yeah.
and can we help?" And I said, "Yes, you
That's
sure
great.
can."
Yeah. is the latest book in the Outlander series being released this year. There's also an original TV series in the works, and it sounds like authenticity and staying true to the books is important to executive producer Ronald Moore. So what's it like seeing your characters come to life in this way, and are you pleased with what they're doing?
Oh, I'm very pleased. Yeah, no, it's just fabulous. I couldn't be happier with the quality of the production and the care that they take with the story. It is an adaptation because it's literally impossible to film a book,
Sure.
page by page. It isn't going to be, exactly the way it is there. Also, a 16-episode commitment to a series or a season is a lot of faith on the part of Starz, and it does give us a lot of room. I'm friends with George R.R. Martin, and I was telling him about my show, and he said, "How many episodes do you get?" And I said, 16. And he said, "What? They only give us 10."
Wow, so that'll be a good platform to launch some of the story visually, I think.
Exactly, yeah. So there is, a lot of room still. It's not enough room to put in everything that's in the book. And so because it is episodic, some things need to be adjusted so that you get a little episode arc, there's a theme and a mini story inside an episode. So on that account, sometimes a scene will be moved from its original place in the plot to somewhere different, or halfway combined with a separate scene. So you would still recognize it as Outlander. I'd say about 85% of what I've seen is original, to the books. You would recognize this material, but it needs to be amended and with these little interpolations to make things make sense. In terms of story
medium,
flow and so forth. And they've done a wonderful job with that. Ron said his philosophy there is that he didn't want to put in stuff that was not in the book. He wanted to put in stuff that could have been in the book, or that obviously was in the book but was off stage, and use that kind of stuff to add in.
And where else to film but in Scotland, right?
Yeah,
Which is great.
We were really lucky that happened, but fortunately the Scottish government is trying to build up their film industry. Yeah.
So you've had a chance to visit Scotland quite a few times. Do you have a favourite place?
Inverness is about my favorite place. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful area and gateway to the Highlands.
Yeah, no, it's just lovely up there.
Yeah. Do you have an opinion on the upcoming Scottish independence referendum?
Well, I do, but it isn't fitting for me to say so in public because,
yes.
I don't live there. It's not my country, so I ought not to be talking in public about what I think.
Yeah. And it is true. It's those that live in Scotland that are going to get the vote. Even Scots out with, the borders like myself. I wish I had a vote, but it's actually the people that live there and, be whatever nationality they are. So it's going to be interesting either way to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, being an American, I'm always in favor of democracy and independence and all that, just on an instinctual level. But, there's all these arguments in terms of, the other issues that are involved there.
Sure.
Mostly economic, but other things. Some of the actors on our show are, very much in favor of independence. Sam Ewan, the man playing Jamie Fraser, is taken to wearing his yes button in public.
There you go. Yeah. Well, how will you know when to end the Outlander series? Will the characters tell you, or will you tell the characters?
Oh no, I never try to run my stories. I don't plan the books out ahead of time. I not only don't outline them, I just don't plan them. So I don't know exactly where it will end or how. But as I work on each book, it kind of it's organic. It grows into a recognizable shape. And once I've seen the shape, then the writing becomes faster because I can see what's missing in terms of shape. And I need a piece that goes up here, I need a piece that comes down there, and I need an L-shaped piece over there, and like that. But the same is true of the series as a whole. There are lots of relations between the books within the series. For instance, the first book and the second book are essentially one piece dealing with the Jacobite Rising. The second book ends with Culloden, essentially.
Yeah.
And so that makes a duo by themselves. But then the third book, Voyager, those three make a trilogy. They're very much linked because Voyager explores what happens after Culloden and as a response and reaction to the aftermath of the Jacobite Rising, which in its way was just as important as the Rising itself.
Sure.
And then the next book, we changed locales because that's what happened in history. As you say, the Highlanders emigrated to America, and half of them went up to Prince Edward Island and Cape Breton and Nova Scotia, and the other half went straight up the Cape Fear River and into the mountains of North Carolina and Tennessee, from whence they have spread all over the place. But that book then also links with its successor, and it's a duo about the establishment of communities in this neck of the woods, along with the beginnings of the American Revolution up through the War of the Regulation was what it was called. And then the third book shows the outbreak of actual hostilities in the American Revolution. So it too is the culmination of this. So you get these 2 and 3 book packages, and then looking back at that trilogy and the next trilogy, you can see how they're linked together, with the Jacobite Rising being the distant echo and beginning of the tinder keg that was the American Revolution. At the time of the Revolution, 1 out of every 3 Americans was a Scot.
Yeah.
And they were just all over the revolution.
Of course, and they're used to fighting for land and being a rebel.
Yeah.
Well, Diana, thank you so much for just taking the time.
Oh, well, thank
Great
you so
advice.
much, Andy.
Thank you, appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed today's celebrations.
Oh, I hope I will, yeah.
Diana left me with some advice for those who want to write in the historical novel genre. Everything depends on good, solid research, she said, so having a deep interest in your subject is crucial. Beyond that, read for ideas and technique. Then write often, and the more you write, the better you'll get. And the most important element of the story? Characters. Believable, realistic characters. It's safe to say that Diana has created some unforgettable characters in her Outlander novels, which is one reason people are still reading her books today. That's it for this episode. Catch up on other episodes of Simply Scottish at our website, simplyscottish.com, or by subscribing on iTunes. And when it comes to Outlander, there's another podcast you might be interested in tuning into. It's called the Outlander Podcast, hosted by Outlander fans Ginger and Summer. Here's a teaser for their show.
This is Ginger
and Summer
from the Outlander Podcast.
and we are in love with all things Outlander.
Each week, we discuss the latest announcements in the Outlanderverse, including Diana Gabaldon's books and the Star's production.
We have interviews, a read-along, and show discussions.
You can subscribe to our podcast through iTunes or directly through our host at audioboo.fm/channel/OutlanderPod.
So please join us on the Outlander Podcast, where the men are kilted, the women are winsome,
And the whiskey is neat.
If you enjoyed the music on this episode, enter our monthly music giveaway for your chance to win a Scottish album from a catalogue of over 4,000, courtesy of MusicScotland.com. Enter online at simplyscottish.com, or get our updates on Facebook or Twitter and we'll remind you each month. Facebook.com/simplyscottish and Twitter.com/simplyscottish. I'll leave you with music from folk singer and guitarist Ewan McLennan. From his album The Last Bird to Sing, this is Jamie Rayburn. I'm Andrew McDermott. Join me again soon for more of All Things Scottish.
My name is Jamie Rayburn, in Glasgow I was born. My place and habitation I'm forced to leave with scorn. My place and habitation I now must gang awa, to leave the bonny hills and dales of Caledonia.
Simply Scottish is hosted and produced by Andrew McDermott. Show content copyright Simply Scottish Media. All music is used with consent of copyright holders. Continue your Simply Scottish experience at simplyscottish.com. Thanks for listening.
Arise ye hapless convicts, arise ye one and all. Today's the day you are to stray from Caledonia. We all arose, put on our clothes, our hearts were full of grief. Our friends who stood around the coach could grant us no relief. Our parents, wives and sweethearts, our hearts were broken to leave the bonny hills and dales of Caledonia. vexed for what I've done. I hope none shall cast up to you the race that I have run. I hope God will protect you when I am far away, far from the bonny hills and dales of Caledonia. Farewell, my dearest father, you are the best of men, and likewise to my sweetheart, it's Catherine is her name. No more we'll walk by Clyde's clear streams or by the Brunila, for I must leave the hills and dales of Caledonia.